This is mLBC, leading MHoC's conversation. The Twistednuke Show. Good afternoon, everybody. A week ago, the House of Commons read a bill calling for a referendum on the monarchy and if Britain should become a republic. This was submitted by the Countess of Brighton, WhatsApp 008. Now, it looks very unlikely that it will pass, but it nonetheless raises a series of interesting questions. Not only does it cause us to ponder the existence of the monarchy, but it also causes us to ponder what would we replace it with. Would we have President Leafy? How would our new constitutional arrangement work? I don't know. Now, cards on the table, I'm a reluctant monarchist. I don't particularly enjoy the institution, but I think its benefits outweigh its costs. But now's your chance to convince me I'm wrong. So my first caller for today will be Harold from Winchester. Harold, hello.
Good evening.
So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I am a hardcore, as you would say, supporter of the monarchy. I think it's an absolutely vital part of the way this country has run for centuries. I absolutely do believe that there are, frankly, hardly any costs to having a monarchy, and its benefits are absolutely essential to this country. We have such amazing monuments, castles built everywhere, amazing attractions. We just had the royal wedding, and there's certainly no reason to abolish it. I find it frankly disgraceful it was even suggested to the House.
Well, I can see a point there, but I'd like to take you up on one point, the economics of it. Now, we're often told that to abolish the monarchy would be a net loss because of the lack of tourism. But France has been a republic for a fair long time, and they still bring in quite a lot from their castles, in fact more than we do. So, do you think that the tourism aspects of the castles and their contribution to the economy in terms of tax would be harmed by the abolition?
Well, I must say I don't believe France should be used as a model for anything. We are obviously the superior country. And I also believe that the tourism from that we receive from our castles is risen almost by the fact that they're still well lived in. Look at Windsor Castle, for example. It's a very popular tourist attraction, and it's still lived in by the Queen and her family. So, no, I don't believe that I do believe that abolishing the monarchy and removing them from their residence would be a net loss in terms of tourism.
Well, if you look at stately homes, for example, it tends to be that if they're still inhabited, then it tends to be a small area of the home that's reserved, while the rest is open to the public. So the bit that tends to be open to the public doesn't tend to be the bit that's lived in anyway. So does it actually make a great deal of difference?
I do believe it would. Yes, there's a certain symbolic value to it that I think attracts quite a lot of people.
And can you see any concern with the possibility of future monarchs vetoing laws?
Well, I do believe that if they do decide to veto a law, then it's within their right as the reigning monarch. It's the divine right of kings or queens. You know, that right is still around. It should still definitely exist in a perfect society. So, if they do decide to veto a bill or any motion or any such thing, then I do not think there would be an issue with that.
So, do you think the monarch should have the ultimate call?
Oh, absolutely.
And what if we found a monarch who decided to become overtly political? Because all that really stops that is tradition.
I think it would be a return to the good ages of Britain when we were a reigning power.
Well, that's certainly an interesting take. Thank you very much for calling in, Harold. My next caller will be Dave from Derry. Hello, Dave.
Hello. I say to hell with the monarchy. I would say abolish the monarchy altogether because it's honestly such a waste of money. And from the French model we've seen, it's that France is doing better as a republic than they are as a monarchy. They gain more international support and recognition for any of their political moves for being the republic that they are, and also just from
It's been hundreds of years since they were a monarchy. It hardly seems a fair comparison.
Well, frankly, I feel many more people are impartial to the Republican model as they are than the monarchy, because the monarchy, frankly, is just an antiquated system that has no place in the 21st century. It's a waste of money on the British taxpayer. It's also a waste of money in our budget as well, because we're giving upwards of £1 million to the royal family when they should be making their own money because they have such massive investments in elsewhere.
Well, at the moment, the Crown estates are effectively held by the Treasury. They're not really, but in practical terms, they are. And that's a raw investment of about 11 billion. Now, we pay 36 million to them, effectively from the Treasury pot. But in terms of taxes alone, the Crown estates are worth 280 million. So they're a net profit at the moment.
Frankly, I think that net profit or not, the monarchy is eventually going to prove itself outdated, and it's going to prove itself to be harsh on the British taxpayer, and it's going to be a disaster later on.
But what about the safety elements of it? So, for example, a situation such as Nazi Germany, where a person was put into power and turned the country into a dictatorship, would be much more difficult in the United Kingdom. Because if such an event happened, the monarch could theoretically use a veto and say, no, I won't let you sign that into law, because that will destroy the United Kingdom's democracy.
Well, I mean, there you have the American system of checks and balances where there's literally several parts of government that prevent the other from establishing some sort of dictatorship by the assembly, by the person, or by the judiciary. It's
yes.
Yeah,
but we already have that achieved with the monarch, though. It works well enough.
Yeah, but there are no checks and balances on the monarch.
That is a good point, although I suspect if it were to come to a point where a monarch became overtly political and just said, no, I don't like you, I want a left-wing prime minister, for example, or I want a right-wing prime minister, I suspect there would be a revolution very quickly. So one has to wonder whether there's actually any great strength for that argument. There may not be a formal check and balance, but there's certainly an informal one.
Well, then we need to set up a formal checks and balance system, or else the monarchy will eventually inevitably fail.
Okay, so what would you replace the monarchy with? Let's say we've decided we're going to abolish the monarchy. What now? Is it President Leafy?
Frankly, any Republican system, you have a president or you have some sort of executive. Now, your executive is most likely comprised of a single person and their cabinet. And then you have your assembly, you have your Congress of sorts. And then you have your courts, and you have federalization. Because federalization has been proven to work, as we've seen in our devolved assemblies.
But isn't having an apolitical head of state quite useful? Because, at least in practice, the monarch should be above politics per se, and that means that, for example, if we take Donald Trump, like him or don't like him, he's certainly branded a lot of criticism, and arguably that makes it harder for America on the world stage. Whereas the Queen, being apolitical, generally there's quite high approval of her.
Well, I can see the appeal of an apolitical head of state, but I think that some sort of political head of state can provide to be very useful, especially on the world stage for Britain.
In what way?
In that we have countries like the United States that will like us no matter what, and if we adopt some sort of political head of state and that happens to agree with the American head of state, then they would be more impartial to support us over any other country.
Yeah, and but what if the opposite was true? What if we had I don't know, we had, let's say, President Contraband here and President Trump? Then they would be polar opposites politically.
Yeah, and even though they're polar opposites, they're still going to be like some sort of mutual understanding that they were elected fairly. They were elected fairly under a system that they know works.
Well, can't we have that from the Prime Minister?
You can, but there are no checks or balances on the Prime Minister at last I've checked.
Well, Parliament can dismiss a government. The monarch can dismiss a government if necessary. And if Parliament doesn't have confidence in a government, they can remove them and either call an election or form a new government.
Fair enough, I see your point. But there's also the issue of a constitution, because right now the United Kingdom does not have a codified constitution, and it makes it very vague on what the powers and the not powers per se of the government are. And there's also the issue of the court system, where it's not a matter of judging the law, rather it's interpreting the law. So if you have a law that's been passed by both houses, both houses of Parliament, like the Lords and the Commons, and both sides of from the opposition and the government, but it's a really bad bill that restricts the personal freedoms of people in the United Kingdom, the court cannot vote to repeal that law. That's unfair, and it has been proven that it's hurting our citizens.
Well, if the judiciary began to repeal laws, then suddenly Parliament would become much less worthwhile, because all of a sudden it wouldn't be entirely the elected representatives who are deciding the laws. It would also be judges who no one can hold accountable.
Well, I'm talking more of like a Supreme Court rather than local courts. Because the idea of a Supreme Court is to either uphold the decision of Parliament or Congress, but it's also to make sure that these laws are not hurting the citizens that it's trying to protect.
So, yes, but isn't a codified constitution very inflexible? For example, we see in Ireland, it becomes a political football. You know, they put in an amendment to ban abortion, whereas that should be a political issue, not a constitutional issue. Surely constitutions are very susceptible to becoming political footballs.
I feel constitutions are very convenient as well to the people, because it's easier to understand what the people's rights are. Because, like, even though that freedom of speech is a guarantee almost in the United Kingdom, it's not explicitly stated anywhere else other than a law that you might have to Google.
Well, yes, but then all you'll do is you'll put it in a constitution you'd have to Google.
Well, the constitution you'd have to Google, but then you teach that in your schools. That very
teach those laws.
I'm just saying, a codified constitution seems to be a lot more convenient to people and maybe to politics as well.
Okay, I'll have to let you go now, I'm afraid, but it's been great talking to you, Dave. My next caller will be Jamie from Aya. Hello, Jamie.
Hello.
So, what are your thoughts here? Would you like to see the monarchy abolished?
Well, I'm a monarchist. I like the Queen. She's done great for the country, especially on the world stage. Since, we've had her for about nearly 70 years as Queen and head of state. And has she ever rejected a bill passed by Parliament?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Yeah.
Under what circumstances do you think it would be appropriate to reject a bill from Parliament?
Well, when it goes against the human rights of the people in the UN Charter, I'd say, probably.
Well, at least that's a formal way of judging it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
my opinion. Not for me to say. That's for Her Majesty to decide.
Do you think if there was a referendum we'd vote to get rid of the monarchy?
No, of course not. There would probably be a major pushback from the monarchists that might make it a bit more equal and divide our country much more. But if one was held today or tomorrow, definitely not.
Well, if let's say hypothetically we did hold one and it did pass, what would we do next?
Well, I'd say we'd have to give the people what they want, because personally, I was Remain, but I think that if a country votes for something you don't like, you should still go through with it. So,
And what model could we use afterwards to replace the role of the monarch?
well, the most ideal would probably be France or Germany. France or Germany. Definitely not America, because that's getting more corrupt. Or we could just keep the system we have and replace Her Majesty with the Emerald, which might work. I don't know.
So what we would have King Leafy, would we?
Well, he'd be like a king, but he'd be a president.
Sounds terrifying already. Well, thank you, Jamie. I don't think I'll be sleeping soundly tonight at the thought of Supreme Leader Leafy. I'm only kidding. He's lovely. Next, we'll go to Alan in Tyrone. Hello, Alan.
Hello.
So, what are your thoughts on what's been said so far?
Well, I think it's a brilliant opportunity for everybody in Ireland. I think that the Queen has no legitimacy in Ireland. We've tried for 100 years. We've tried for 100 years to get rid of the monarchy and to unite Ireland, and this seems to be our one chance, our recent chance. And while I don't really agree with everything that's going on in England and our English-dominated political system, getting rid of the monarchy is the best first step in getting united Ireland and getting rid of this horrible, undemocratic, aristocratic system that you currently have in England.
So to you, abolition of the monarchy would purely be a political tool for a united Ireland?
I don't really care about England.
Okay. So, which do you live in the Republic or the north of Ireland?
Oh, I'm from Tyrone, which is unfortunately in the sixth county, but as everybody from around where I know is 26 plus 6 equals 1. We have one united Ireland.
I'm not quite sure of the maths of that, but I'm only a classical liberal, so I don't know.
26 counties in the south, 6 counties in the north, makes one Ireland. Choke Allah.
Oh dear. So, do you see that the monarchy would actually make any difference to the cause of a united Ireland?
Well, firstly, I think it's quite funny that this bill submitted finally came from somebody who's been a countess for years now. And has been a devout Irish Republican, and I will be working with her through petitions, etc., in order to get the monarchy out of England. I think that not just Ireland, but monarchy should be abolished everywhere. It's authoritarian, it's undemocratic. Nobody voted for these monarchs, and I think that they should get out of Ireland.
Well, I mean, you can say it's democratic, but also it can act as a safeguard to democracy. It would be much harder to go down the kind of route Weimar Germany went down.
How can you safeguard democracy? I mean, if you have a look at Ireland, we've had presidents for years, and none of them have gone authoritarian. Actually, I think.
Well, yes, but that doesn't mean they never will.
Political, and I'd much prefer him to have him as our president than our current queen.
Yes, but still, it does act as a safeguard. Just because your house hasn't burned down doesn't mean you cancel your home insurance. And surely with something as important as British democracy, although admittedly you would prefer to be an Irish democracy, it's important to have these safeguards, even if we don't need them.
I disagree, and I obviously this referendum is probably going to fail. It's probably not even going to get out of the House of Commons, which, by the way, is democratic, even though I think that Sinn Féin shouldn't have taken up their seats.
I agree.
But I think that we should be fighting as hard as we can as Republicans in Ireland to free the English from their aristocratic oppressors.
And in what way are they oppressive?
Well, we still have an aristocracy and an unelected House of Lords, which has to approve every single bill we have. And yes, nothing's been vetoed for 300 years, but it could be. And
Well, it can't. We have the Parliament Acts. If the Lords say no to a bill and send it back to the Commons, and the Commons just sends it up unamended again, then the Lords don't get a say on it. It goes through the Parliament Act. So Parliament ultimately gets the final say. The Lords can act as a revisionary chamber, but Parliament has to agree to all the revisions they make.
well, why not get rid of the Lords completely and have something better that represents the people? For example, a Senate or something.
Well, the trouble is with a Senate is it would become more politicised. Admittedly, the Lords are somewhat politicised, but not to the same extent. For example, they don't have to be cautious about their views because they don't have to be afraid of being re-elected. Ultimately, there's still a lot of power vested in the Commons, and overall the Commons gets the ultimate decision, but the Lords allow for less.
The Queen gets the ultimate decision. The Queen has to accept it.
Well, in theory, but she's never vetoed anything, and the understanding is the veto would be an emergency action, because if it wasn't, and the Queen started to veto everything, then there would be a revolution in a month.
England needs democracy.
We have democracy. Parliamentary democracy was invented in England.
Good, and it should be exported everywhere, including to Ireland.
I believe we already have, and unless I've shockingly misunderstood the Irish system.
Oh no, we don't. Ireland is still split up, and it's while we do have a democratic executive, we don't have democracy in Ireland, and never have done, and won't do until Ireland is united.
Well, that's certainly an opinion, and you are certainly entitled to your desire for a united Ireland. To be honest, I don't even want to touch the issue of united Ireland with a 10-foot barge pole. If the Irish want to reunite, that's their business. But thank you very much for your call, Alan. Okay, my next caller will be Archie from Bath. Hello, Archie.
Hello.
So, well, what are your thoughts on the show so far, and the point we're talking about?
Well, I think that it is an absolute disaster to get rid of the monarchy. The UK monarchy is the jewel in the great United Kingdom that is known as Great Britain across the globe. It's not just good for the reasons people think it is. And yes, it brings in a lot of tourist revenue and is good for the economy and for business. But it is a remarkably democratic institution if you look at the opinion polls, and it is a great safeguard to the British Constitution. For example, the Queen has never had an approval rating lower than 68%. And that is extremely democratic. I would like you to see anyone get anywhere near that high in any true republican democracy. We are one United Kingdom, of course, and have been in some form for 1,000 years. And I don't think we can get this go for purely party political matters, as the Countess of Sussex, or wherever she is sitting now, as we have now got a new Duke and Duchess of Sussex. I don't know where. Let's stop that again. I don't know what will happen if this goes to a referendum, but I really hope that nobody will vote for it, apart from the noble Countess herself.
Oh, I'm sure she'd be very disappointed to hear that. But I feel we need to take you up on a point you mentioned. How can a system that's designed to be inherently unelected and inherently hereditary be described as democratic?
Well, as I said, the Queen currently has an approval rating of 68%.
Well, yes, but that doesn't make it democratic. That just means she's approved of.
Well, I think that, of course, the Queen authorises Parliament, and Parliament is very democratic. The Queen has never gone against the wishes of Parliament. And if it ever were to, then I think that we may be having a different conversation right now, but I have trust in the Queen and the whole royal family that they will follow the democratic wishes of the British people.
Now, let's have a hypothetical question. So, Queen will eventually die, we have a new monarch, and let's say this new monarch doesn't particularly respect Parliament, and starts getting the odd law where they think, no, I don't like this, I'm not going to sign this into law.
As we've seen in the film King Charles III.
Yes, actually, that was a very good film. I quite enjoyed it. But I mean, it raised an interesting point, because in that film it was a serious law, and it was a serious issue. It's freedom of the press to some degree. And when does it become acceptable for the monarch to step in, and what is the result of that? Is it revolution?
Well, you must remember that for the last 300 years or so, or more than that, since the Bill of Rights in the 1680s, we've had a constitutional monarchy where the monarch has been fully accountable to all of her subjects, or his subjects in the case of a male monarch, which has been the majority of the time. And I think that the king or the queen will have to do a lot of consultation with the people beforehand.
How? They can't. For example, if a prime minister wanted, they could hold a referendum. They could dissolve parliament. Well, they could ask the Queen to dissolve parliament and seek a general election for a mandate. Neither of these things the Queen or King can do.
Oh, you forget one crucial thing, and that is elections are called in the name and by writ of the reigning monarch. And I think that it would be incumbent on the monarch to hold new elections if there is such a rift between the monarchy and the parliament that they won't be able to get anything done.
And what if the rift didn't address itself? What if it came with broadly the same results?
Well, I think that the British Constitution is such that the role of the people is supreme over the rule of the monarch, and that the monarch is sensible enough to know when to put his or her own personal wishes aside to the good of the British people.
And if they're not, is it revolution time?
No, I don't think revolution is ever justified in the UK, and I'm glad that we've never even had an attempted revolution. I don't think it's in the British spirit.
Have you heard of Cromwell?
That wasn't a revolution, that was an illegal civil war. And also, it didn't have popular approval, as you can see by the fact that he wasn't able to pass anything gone long term, and as soon as he died, then it reverted back to being a monarchy.
So, what happens if, worst case scenario, we have a queen or king who just will not cooperate with Parliament, says no, I'm taking back control?
I think that constitutionally, of course, she is perfectly within her right to do so. However, I think that she should be prepared to face the wrath of the peers of the realm and of the members of the House of Commons elected. And I know that the monarchy will always find a way. It always has.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been wonderful to speak to you. Okay, our last caller for this evening will be Nick in Perth. Hello, Nick.
Good day, mate.
So, you also have the Queen, I believe, unless there's been a sudden revolution. So, do you approve of Australia still being a monarchy-based system?
Well, I think that Australia is better off with the monarchy, seeing as the economic benefits coming with the Commonwealth and the certain status it gives us as a nation in the world stage, as a Commonwealth country, with the Queen as our head of state, or as a part of our head of state.
What's the economic benefits?
Well, I believe the economic benefits come from trade and free trade policies between us and New Zealand and Canada and South Africa.
Yeah, but that would surely that could still be there if the Queen was no longer there and it was a republic system.
But without the Queen, if we never had a Queen to begin with, then we wouldn't have this economic benefits coming from the Commonwealth.
Yeah, but if it was an abolition today,
if it were an abolition today, I believe then the United Kingdom, even though it doesn't affect me personally, it would severely affect the United Kingdom because most people think favourably upon the British monarchy. And I believe that whatever is best for England is going to end up being best for Australia.
And what do you think of calls, perhaps by various Australian Prime Ministers, saying that after Queen Elizabeth dies, they would like Australia to become a republic?
Well, I mean, nobody likes Charles here anyway, so I believe that many of the calls might have some substance to them. But again, while nobody would like Charles, they would like the monarchy. And Charles might be representative of the monarchy in the future, but he's going to end up being our king, and we're going to have to live with that. And nobody's going to nobody's going to have to fuss because it's just going to ruin the stability of our Commonwealth.
Okay, well, clearly the monarchist spirit in Australia is still going strongly. Thank you very much for calling in. You're listening to mLBC, leading MHoC's conversation. Time for the news. Campaigning has begun in Scotland surrounding the welfare devolution referendum. It has been widely criticised by cross-party figures who have branded it illegal and began an abstention campaign. Nationally, a petition for a final referendum on the Brexit process has begun to gain traction, with the Liberal Democrats heavily campaigning for signatures. Bloody Country has stated we must all sign this petition to make sure we get a say on the final deal, a real people's vote. The classical Liberal MP Twistednuke commenting, saying we've got our own little quislings. On the mLBC markets, the stock of Speakers Inc. has plummeted after Ron failed to gain the expected majority. The Salt Index closed 3 points up today. The pound buys 1 meme 37 and 1,256 nub coins.